Keith Cooper of Indiana is a man who was wrongfully convicted of an armed robbery back in the 90s, and decades later, he is still fighting for something approaching justice in his life. He was originally sentenced in 1997 for a robbery committed in Elkhart, Indiana, still has a felony on his record despite being a free man. He served 10 years in prison before his conviction was overturned, again, for a crime that he did not commit. Now, over time, as he was in jail, more and more evidence came out to show that he was not actually the man who did it. Back in 2005, an Indiana Court of Appeals overturned the conviction of Cooper's co-defendant. Cooper was given a choice: a new trial before the same judge that convicted him, or go free, but with a felony on his record, a record that continues to contain that felony. Now, some of what's happened in the meantime, in 2014, Indiana's parole board and the prosecutor on the case unanimously recommended that Mike Pence, governor of Indiana, who you might have heard of, he's been hanging out a lot with Donald Trump lately, unanimously recommended that Pence pardon him. Pence refused. Now, the deputy prosecutor, originally involved in the actual case with Keith, said, "Dear Governor Pence," in a letter, "I am the former deputy prosecuting attorney that prosecuted Keith Cooper in the Elkhart County Circuit Court. I am writing to you in support of Mr. Cooper's petition for a pardon." So you have the parole board, you have one of the prosecutors involved in the case originally. He went on to say, "We cannot undo the wrongful imprisonment of Mr. Cooper, obviously, but we can undo his wrongful conviction with a pardon." And so now he spent 10 years in prison. He's been fighting for years to get the felony taken off his record, a felony that everybody understands at this point he did not commit. Governor Pence told Cooper he should request a new trial and exhaust all of his legal options before requesting a pardon. Now understand that, again, Keith Cooper didn't do this. Also understand Mike Pence has pardoned 3 people with felony convictions who admitted guilt during his time as governor. So maybe Keith would have had a better chance if he'd actually done the crime.
Yeah, and there's no, just to be clear, no question he didn't do the crime. They got new DNA evidence. It turned out they have the guy. It's a different guy who did it. What strikes me most about the story, Mike Pence is a bad guy. Mike Pence might be a worse guy than Donald Trump. Mike Pence wanted in 2001 to redirect money for HIV/AIDS research and treatment of people to gay conversion therapy. Mike Pence is a despicable person. So Mike Pence's behavior here doesn't surprise me. I don't know, it seemed like a freebie. It seems like a layup that you're not taking. But what strikes me most about this is that moment, and I guess, when was it, John? 2007, when he's given the option. Like, they've already freed his co-defendant. So they're saying, admit guilt and you can go free, or you can go for a new trial. If they allow him to go free, they know, whoever was prosecuting it then, but they don't want that on their record. They don't want the precedent of letting somebody go free. So they're like, we'll let you out of prison. You can walk out of here today, but you're going to have to admit guilt, which will let us feel better, even though we know you didn't do it. That, to me, that's the, we talk about wanting to arrest people on Wall Street and so forth. That seems criminal to me, that kind of behavior, to not say, wow, Keith Cooper, you're free today, no matter what. You walk out of here. If you want a new trial, fine, but you're free. And making him say he was guilty to a crime he didn't commit to save face, that's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, Ben, I don't think you're being fair to Mike Pence. I think that what might be worse than the gay conversion therapy is when he wanted to force women who had an abortion or a miscarriage to do a funeral for their fetus.
Didn't just want to, he signed that law.
Yeah, and so, yes, he's a legendarily bad guy if people knew enough about him. But look at this, in the middle of a presidential run, when you know the guy is innocent, it's amazing. How hard is it? And Mike Pence knows. It's not like Mike Pence doesn't know, he knows. Everybody knows. The parole board never says, hey, pardon the guy. They might parole people, etc., but it's a very rare thing for them to say, yo, governor, over here, this guy's super innocent. For Christ's sake, in the middle of a red state, make sure you pardon him. Yeah. And Pence is like, nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. I'm running for president, and I need to see, or vice president, maybe eventually president after Trump gets impeached, if that were to happen. Anyway, no, I'm not going to do it because I need to seem more barbaric.
Yeah. Cenk, Mike Pence is even more disgusting than that. while he was doing all that stuff, I saw a picture of him one time putting ketchup on a steak while wearing Crocs.
Oh my goodness.
Well, they're
Shouldn't be allowed to run.
In Indiana, though, they're like that. He has a nickname in Indiana. Do you know it? It's Mike. That was from the convention
That's
when
right.
they said that. Like, that's not a nickname. That's his name.
That's what they call him back home. They call him back home.
Back home,
For
they call
sure.
him Mike.
For sure. So also, I didn't make clear, this isn't just about clearing his name. I mean, there's a human cost to this. So he has that on his record, and that has employment consequences. He's out there, he's been doing the same job for almost 10 years now. He wants to move up in the ranks, but there are some jobs that if you have a felony on your record, you can't actually get, even if the people at his job understand that he didn't actually do it. We see this is one of the, we talk on the show a lot about the various ways that the Justice Department is, to use a term that's been popular recently, rigged against the regular person, but it's where politics intrudes on what should be, it seems, I think to anyone in the audience right now, a common sense thing. You explain what happened, it's taken off of his record. But when you put it for someone like Mike Pence to even have a say in the matter, well, he's trying to appeal to absolutely crazy people on his side. And so what do you expect the result to be? And so people get held by, for instance, can he vote at this point? I assume that he cannot. And so what he's asking for is to simply have a slightly better chance at moving up within his job. Now, unfortunately, the justice for Keith will never go beyond that, because Indiana is one of the 20 states in this country that has no laws allowing for compensation for people who've been wrongfully imprisoned. You should get millions and millions of dollars for a full decade of your life being robbed from you.
It's almost like Indiana has a history of racism or something. I'm going to guess those 3 people that he did pardon who admitted guilt, white?
I don't know, but I think we should look into it.
We should look at it.
There's a good chance.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, let's just, last 2 things here to focus on. John makes a good point. It's also on the voters. I mean, if you're a conservative, do you want people who are innocent to be punished? Is that a thing? Do conservatives, do you feel good at night going to sleep thinking, I'm a good Christian, I punished that innocent guy. I rewarded the politician who wouldn't let him off knowing that he's free, knowing that he didn't do it. Now again, he's not in prison anymore, but won't take it off his record, right? Does that make you feel better for the guy? Does that make you feel like, yeah, Mike Pence is my guy. He will not do justice.
Also, just first of all, we know from many other cases the number of times prosecutors won't walk back a conviction once they know it's wrong. It happens, it doesn't just happen in Indiana, it happens across the country. There is an unwillingness to admit that justice was not served in a prior case. Frequently, I've now gotten to the point where I'm always amazed when a prosecutor does this, when somebody says, interesting that he's, I bet, no longer there.
I don't know. I mean, not in that same position.
In that same
no.
position, so that there's such a hesitancy to do it. But Mike Pence doesn't have to have a press conference about it. Just sign it and go on campaigning. Just get it over with. Just do it. Take you 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So because Democratic voters don't have much say here because, it's a red state. Now, they could have plenty of say if they had a Democratic governor, and that's not impossible in Indiana.
No, I think they're about to have one.
Yeah, that's right. So you'll have plenty of say in a little bit, right? But but more importantly here, Republican voters, is this what you want to reward? Or do you want to say, hey, wait, don't do injustice on my name, on my behalf, just because you think that's going to make me happy? I'm not a fan of injustice either. And then secondly, I just wanted to point out, this is sometimes bipartisan. Bill Clinton interrupted his primary fight when he was in '92, when he was running for president, to go back home to Arkansas to execute a guy who a lot of people thought was mentally not competent. And he bragged about it. And that was a hell of a thing to do, and not a hell of a thing to do in a positive way. And so I'm saying to all voters, stop rewarding that kind of behavior.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're the law and order. I mean, Trump keeps saying we're law and order, we're law and order. So maybe, in some crazy way, they would see like, oh, this is me showing a vulnerability, that I'm going to let this guy go because he's black, and we all know he did something.
Yeah. Yeah, and remember, by the way, it was only a couple of weeks ago that Donald Trump, the Central Park 5 case was brought up again. It was made clear they didn't actually do it. Do you think that they did it? Yes, I still think that they did it.
I mean,
and that's both his flaw psychologically, but obviously Republicans look out there and they see enough voters who refuse to accept any backtracking, any changing your mind, any evolution of what you think, and so they respond to it. And so To some extent, we're responsible for the way our politicians act. If we tell them, if you ever change your mind, if you ever take in evidence and adapt based on that we're going to think that you're weak or spineless or something like that, then they're not going to change their mind when the evidence changes. And that's not a good place for the political system to be.
Real quick, poll in Indiana today, the Democrat is up 5 points today in Indiana to be the governor. Obviously, Pence not running for re-election, so there might be a Democratic governor. I'm sure he's a real progressive.
I know what you're thinking about the corporate media.
Oh, no, not again.
I hear you, brother. Luckily, there's the Young Turks, and you make it happen. Come join us. tytnetwork.com/join.